What's going on, guys? It's Kyle here with Gnarly Knives, and today we're going to be taking a look at this, the Spyderco Para 3 Lightweight. This knife, I've been meaning to do this full review on for quite a while now. I got this knife a little over a year ago, and I believe in that video I said I was going to probably do a full review within a couple months. Well, now we're moving on to over a year, so long overdue, the full review on the Para 3 Lightweight. So we'll just do the specs real quick and just get that up out of the way. The weight on this knife is 2.5 ounces, or it's technically 2.4 ounces, which is cool because that makes it the same weight as the Delica 4. Now we'll do a little bit with comparing the two in a bit, because in a sense you'll see in the title of the video, but is this the Delica 4 killer? And I think in some aspects, yes, and some aspects, maybe not as much. Still a sweet knife. So, like I said, it's 2.4 ounces. The total length on this blade is 7 1/8 inches, giving it a 4 1/4 inch handle, a total blade length of just under 3 inches. It's like 2 15/16 inches. And then you have an actual cutting edge of just over 2.5 inches, looking at about 2 5/8 inches for the blade length. So it's still a decent blade length. You definitely get some work done. What's cool with that, it'll make it more legal in a lot of areas. Most places it's between 3 and 3.5 inches is the legal blade length, and this having a 3-inch total blade length, and you could argue if you wanted that the cutting edge is basically 2.5 inches, a little over. So that definitely makes a sweet thing about it, because it opens up options to a lot of people where they might not be able to carry a bigger knife, say like the Paramilitary 2, where it does have the 3.5-inch blade, where it could be still legal in some areas, but it could extend it in others. Or be extended past what is legal in other areas. So like the name states, it is definitely a lightweight. I do not own the standard Para 3, or the standard Para 3. I do have I have a few Paramilitary 2s, and I have handled Para 3s quite a few times in stores. Just wasn't sure if it was something I really wanted to get, but after getting this, I really did come to realize I do at some point want to get one of the Para 3s. Because it's kind of nice sometimes having a little bit of a smaller knife. Generally, I do like carrying, I just like longer blades. I just find it to be more useful. That being said, sometimes it is nice having a smaller knife. And I've come to prefer this over the Delica 4. I still love my Delica 4. But the Delica 4, it's funny now, it's kind of just been reserved as, it's actually the knife I just have my girl grab now whenever she needs to cut boxes or packages open, because I have like a Amazon box with all my pocket knives in it, and she'll always just randomly grab one to cut something open, which is fine. But then I go to grab a knife and there's just like gunk and stuff all over the blade, the tape residue. So I just have this resting in the front so she can just grab this. And this is getting a little gunked up, but steel is holding up pretty well. It's a VG10. But when I would typically want to carry a smaller knife, I would grab the Delica 4. Now I grab the Para 3. It's just fun. A lot of it for me is just because it does have the compression lock, so it just makes it a little more fun to play with. I mean, the Delica 4, you can, if you get it kind of dialed in, or if you have a decent little bit of index finger strength, you can still close it one-handed just like that. So you can still have some fun playing with it, because that is definitely a part of having a lot of pocket knives, or a lot of people who carry pocket knives, is other than just being a tool, it's just something you can kind of fidget with. So you definitely can do that with the Delica 4s, but it's just more fun for me anyway with the compression lock. The steel on it, so this isn't in the S30V like the Para 3s are, which now I think they're being changed, like the Paramilitary 2 going to the S45VN. But the Para 3, as of right now, It is CTS BD1N, so it's a bit of an upgrade over typical CTS BD1, which isn't a bad steel, but this definitely has good amount more edge retention because I have the Manix 2 lightweight in the standard BD1. And while it is still a decent steel, I noticed the BD1N definitely holds it a bit longer. The N being for nitrogen, I believe, or it could be niobium. I'll have to check my knife steel app, but I'm pretty sure it's nitrogen. If you know, just feel free to drop it in the comments. But I really like the steel a lot. And what is interesting, I highly recommend checking out, just in general, because it's a great channel, but Pete over at the Cedric and Ada channel, because he does a lot of steel testing. And what's really cool is around the time this came out, he did a steel test with CTS BD1N and compared it to S30V in the sense of just doing his edge retention testing. And it was interesting. S30V still had a little bit more edge retention, but this was pretty close. I believe they were within about 10% of each other with how many cuts they were able to do. So I thought that was kind of interesting, um, because I do not believe this is a powder steel. But also, if you do know that, let me know. I don't think it is. I know at least the typical BD1 isn't. So, I mean, maybe they did do it with this, that I would have to research. But if you do know, um, point being, though, it is a pretty good steel. I had first heard about this. I think they had started using it in general in kitchen knives. And if it made good for kitchen knives, Spyderco was like, hey, let's throw it on this. And I really like it. I do think this is a good steel. I hope it starts to maybe replace some of their more budget steels, just like getting away from like the HCR 13, though it isn't a terrible steel. Just now as, like S30Vs kind of fall into the wayside, more and more stuff comes out, more things are getting replaced. Similar to how you can get D2 in a lot of budget knives now, whereas before, you would find it maybe not necessarily in super high end knives, not that they didn't or don't exist, but usually in like mid range knives, you would get D2 in a steel in a knife that you would be paying a little bit more for. But now you can get D2 in knives that are like 20-ish, $30, where, before you'd be spending, 50, 100 or more, depending on the steel or depending on the knife and the maker. So I'm hoping eventually they kind of phase this to kind of move into, say, if they started doing like the Tenacious, um, and that whole range of Spyderco's budget knives. But it's a really cool knife. The steel I do really like a lot. I actually gave it a little tune up earlier today. It does take a great edge. I mean, obviously, if it's a steel that's being used, it'll take an edge. Why would they use it if it wouldn't? But it takes an edge very easily. It takes a very sharp edge very well, and it still holds it for a decent amount of time. No, this is not. This isn't Maximet or something. It's not going to hold its edge forever, but it will still hold it a really good amount of time and be able to hold up to a good amount of work. Um, I haven't run into too many things like hitting the blade off of, but in my experience, just hitting a staple in a cardboard box or something, it does seem that the steel is more likely to roll versus chip. So, I mean, that could be viewed as a positive. Um, like I said, it does hold the edge well. And it's a stainless steel. I mean, obviously, with that nitrogen and stuff in it, it's a pretty stainless knife. I haven't had any issues with. I've never seen a speck of rust on it, and I don't treat my stainless steels like with my carbon knives that I have in storage. If they're, I'm not sure I'm going to use it, I'll keep a coating of that fix and wax stuff on it to keep it from rusting. I don't do that with my stainless knives. Yeah, some of them over time, especially if it's in the summer, they'll get a bit of rust. Nothing crazy. It's usually just surface rust. You can more or less just scratch off with your fingernail. But I've never noticed any on the CTS BD1N. So that I think is kind of cool. So it's definitely a good stainless steel. I would say it has a decent toughness to it. Just with my experience of, just hitting a few things with it, nothing crazy. I haven't done any extensive testing or like beating on the edge with it. but it holds up pretty well from what I have noticed, and I like that a lot. The knife itself, the handle material is the same that you'll find with either Delicas and Duras, the other lightweight, being the FRN. It's definitely, they manufacture, or not manufacture it, but they do it a little differently. It's definitely a little bit smoother, or almost more polished on like the sides of the knife, but you still have that good grip, very similar to you'll see on the Delica. And it does add a nice amount of grip to it, but I like how the edges are very much rounded over. It's very comfortable. It I can, without using the finger choil, I can just fit my pinky in here. And even if my pinky backs up a little bit, that's fine. So if your hands are any smaller than mine, you'll definitely fit no problem. But if your hands are larger, you still have that choil. So if you drop up to the choil, now I have enough room, I can almost fit another pinky on there. I mean, I don't usually use the choil, the knife being so small anyway. Um, I just haven't done anything where I need the preciseness with it, but I like you have that option there. But it is very comfortable to hold. And, just holding it in the regular grip without the choil, my fingers don't usually feel too crowded. Maybe if I was using it for hours at a time, I'm sure my opinion would change. But it is very comfortable. And then they do have, which I like, not everyone does, but they do have the wire clip, and it is a deep carry. So, you have less than 1/8 of an inch that'll poke out through the top. So that's good. I like that. I mean, deep carry, not deep carry doesn't really bother me. I mean, if you look at the Delica, you have, I don't know, probably a 1/2 inch at least that's poking up out of your pocket. But then again, too, that gives you something a little more to grab onto. Preference at that point. That's how I kind of see it. It definitely, the action is pretty decent. I've taken this apart a couple of times, and it does only have one washer on it on one side. Um, it has little ridges so you can see, like, where it's coming in contact, the handle, yeah, the handle scale with the the blade. So it's not the smoothest knife ever. Like if it did have washers on both sides, but it opens and closes reliably. I really don't have any issues with it. Um, like I said, it's not the smoothest, but it's not like gritty in any way. It is just fun to play with. And also, too, it is linerless. So that I think is kind of interesting, just compared to with the Delica 4, which does have liners, and they managed to keep the same weight. But also, too, if you look at the thickness, the blade is at least twice as thick on the Para 3 lightweight. So that's definitely a good amount of the weight. But what I noticed, too, I'm trying to see if I can... one side of the knife, you do have a little metal piece here. I think it's just part of the pivot. So it's just from the top of my finger, the top from pretty much my index finger to my thumb. So you do have that little plastic piece there, and that just kind of a metal piece there. So it's not a full liner. You do, I guess you could call it a partial liner, but I think that's just more for the pivot. And then the other side there isn't, and then it's just linerless. But that's totally fine. The only other metal on the handle would just be where the compression lock is, and that just kind of mounts up in. But I don't see myself doing anything super crazy with it, and the knife holds up pretty well. I mean, I've seen in some videos people kind of complain that if you take, you can kind of squeeze it a bit. And yeah, I mean, if it had liners, I guess it wouldn't do that as much. But I mean, at the same time, the Delica has liners, and you know, I mean, yeah, it's not doing it as much, but if you really squeeze, you can. So, I don't know. I think that's just, again, goes to the preference thing. Um, then again, if I knew I was going to be doing a lot of rough cutting or crazy tasks with the knife, even if this did have full liners, I probably would grab something larger anyway. So even if it was the standard Para 3 with the G10 and the liners and everything, I'd probably just still grab something a little larger. But if you need it, it'll do it, I guess. Um, the price on, I guess that is something good to bring up. So the price kind of has fluctuated on this. When it first came out a little over a year ago, maybe close to a year and a half, They were going for $91. I picked it up probably 2 months after it came out, few months after it came out, and I picked this up for, it was either 97 or $98. Now you can get them, the ones like this with the non-coated blade. I looked online; they're going for about 105 on Amazon, and then the coated blades, I think those like 110 or 115, which is typical just with the knives anyway. If you get, usually it's about anywhere from like a $5-10 difference for coated versus non-coated. Um, but is that a good price for the knife? I don't know. I mean, because you figure, just say it's around $100, a little over $100. I mean, I guess, there are other knives that probably cost this much that are, I would say, would definitely be worth less. I mean, if this knife was like, I feel like this would be good. Like, this knife should be, like, I think like $75. But then again, the Delicas, those are going for like $85. You get it coated, you're looking at like $90. So, I mean, for like a $10-15 difference, and I guess that's just the way, what the prices are and stuff. So compared to the Delica, I would say, yeah, this is a decent price. But I also feel like the Delica should be like a $60 knife. Um, 'Kay, I think when I picked up the Delica, they were going for like $65, and then they were 75. Now they're 85. But that's just kind of the knife companies across the board, or just things in general. Prices always go up; they very rarely go down. Um, that being said, if you do get the knife, I mean, you won't be dissatisfied with it. I mean, if you don't mind the price, I feel like overall it is a really good knife, and even my girl used it a little bit earlier. And it's funny. I think she, even if she doesn't realize it, she's been getting better with using the compression lock. I think she was generally having issues because her nails were a little bit longer. So I think she had trouble getting her finger in. Um, but I kind of drove him like, oh, we should get you one. And she's like, yeah, whatever. Like, because she already does have a knife. She carries my Benchmade, my mini grip. And she has the old school one when they were still in the 154 CM. Now they're an S30V, but it is a pretty nice knife. I mean, it is fun to play with. It is effective to use. I really like the steel. I kind of hope they start using this in more of their knives. Like I was saying before, especially if they start with their more budget knives, I think that would be kind of cool. Um, I mean, is it a Delica killer? I mean, because even if you look at it, the actual cutting edge, you know, you might get a hair more with the Delica, so I guess it is a little bit shorter blade length. But I mean, I'm talking eighth of an inch or less. I definitely like the blade profile overall, but then again, when it comes to the amount of belly, is very similar. So when it comes to actual blade cutting performance, you're going to be virtually identical from what I have found. I mean, with the BD1N, you're going to get a little bit more edge retention, so you won't have to sharpen it quite as much. But it is also still very easy to sharpen, but so is VG10. Still very easy to sharpen. Or maybe that's one. Maybe if I'm, instead of going to the HCR13 and replacing it, I mean, it'd be cool if they replace that with VG10 and then their VG10 knives and just start making standard Delicas in the BD1N. Because you're getting basically the same idea of, decent cutting edge retention, and also it's stainless. So you're getting the very much similar idea, just in my opinion, a little bit of a better steel, at least when it comes to edge retention. Still decently tough. I mean, VG10, okay. It's kind of hit or miss. I guess it depends on what you're bumping it into. Because I know sometimes VG10 will roll, sometimes it'll chip. But from what I've noticed, I think I've chipped my VG10 on the Delica 4 maybe once or twice. You know, I haven't had it happen with this, but I've also done, definitely more cutting. I wouldn't say a ton more cutting or using of the Delica 4 versus the Para 3, but I would say it is less likely to chip the BD1N versus the delica with the VG10. Rolling is about the same. I mean, you hit the same thing, doesn't really matter what the steel is. You're going to have some form of damage or at least dulling. Um, but I do definitely enjoy this knife. I really think it, like I said, if you can kind of get past the price, because I do think the price is a little steep on it, but I guess that's kind of knives or a Spyderco in a nutshell with that. Still love them. But yeah, I mean, they could do a little better, right? Let's do better. Make it make sense. But I hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys have these, let me know. I know they've done a couple sprint runs with these, at least one. I'm trying to remember the steel that they were doing it in. Um, but it does make a good platform, because even the sprint run that they were doing, it did come in generally, I noticed, cheaper than what you would get the regular Para 3. So if you're really in it for the steels more than the knives themselves, which is where I find that I've kind of been going to lately, um, the last maybe couple years. I mean, especially now too, I know I've been kind of getting more into the old school traditional knives, but if it can bring the cost down a bit, but then you also get the same performance out of the steel itself, but you bring the price down with the handle materials and everything, that would be a cool way to get different steels a little bit cheaper. So I hope they continue to do that with these. I think that would be really cool. And then I just think the lightweight idea in general, it can help, it can be appealing to some people. I mean, I don't think it's significantly lighter. So this is about 2.5 ounces. The regular Delica, the regular Para 3 is 3.5 ounces. But for some people, like counting ounces, especially if you're carrying a lot of stuff, that little bit all adds up. So I guess I can see that there. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoy it. I know I definitely do. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you would. And remember to check us out on Instagram, where I do post a lot of random stuff. Um, but I'm posting things having to do with knives or upcoming stuff, or just random stuff not really relating to doing reviews or videos, but just, hey, this is what's going on. So please remember to do all that if you would, and remember to keep carving and stay sharp. Peace.